I'm happy to take you through the journey. So, briefly speaking, myself and my co-founders, Joseph and Hanan, in Field Trip, were also business partners. And our last business is a company called Canadian Cannabis Clinics with a sister company, Cannabis RX. And Canadian Cannabis Clinics quickly scaled to become the largest network of cannabis specialized medical clinics in Canada. And Cannabis RX, we sold to Aurora Cannabis. At the time, Aurora was a recently licensed producer in Canada of cannabis. We took active positions within Aurora, helped Aurora grow over the next 2 years from a Canadian securities exchange listed company with $100 million combined market cap to a $10 billion or so New York Stock Exchange listed company. And it was a great run. But towards the end, we sold Cannabis RX and Canadian Cannabis Clinics in kind of middle of 2016, and we left Aurora in the middle of 2018 after we had hit our earnout milestones. And our choice to depart from the cannabis industry was a function of a number of things. Hitting our milestones was a big achievement, and just being naturally entrepreneurs, it was a good time to step off. And separate ways from Aurora. And it was a great experience. We still have great relationships with the Aurora team, but it was just naturally time to go. And it was actually, I think, the first meeting after we left Aurora. We had just rented some new office space to kind of figure out what the heck we were doing next. And Joseph, one of my business partners, had a meeting with a woman who was looking to do something in psilocybin. And he came out of the meeting, and I'm like, oh, who are you meeting with? And it was actually a woman named Judy Bloomstock, who's the CEO of Diamond Therapeutics, which is actually pursuing a business model very similar to Compass Pathways. But at the time, I didn't know anything about psychedelics, right? I remember vaguely having heard something about Peter Thiel making an investment in some psilocybin company, but never really crossed my mind into any further depth. But what Judy alerted us to was just all of the things that were happening in the space. Between MAPS had recently been granted breakthrough therapy designation for their MDMA assisted trials. Peter Thiel had, I think, made a subsequent investment in Compass. And then interestingly, and this was actually the most important part for me, just trying to get a sense of the opportunity, Judy alerted us to the fact that there were 4 or 5 online stores openly selling psilocybin mushrooms in Canada. Very much illegally, but they were operating and doing their thing, and no one cared. And this isn't dark web. This wasn't anything like controversial. I mean, I guess it's controversial, but it wasn't happening in the shadows. It was out front, in your face. And when I realized that was happening, it just cued me up to the fact that there was a cultural zeitgeist happening, right? It just became so abundantly clear to me that there are all of these convergent forces happening. You had obviously the success of cannabis legalization in Canada and jurisdiction by jurisdiction in the US. You had companies and apps like Calm and Headspace achieving billion-dollar valuation. Meditation was front and center. Obviously, yoga has been front and center for a while, but you could see the kind of shift towards mental health, emotional health, behavioral health becoming a really mainstream topic. You had this backlash against the kind of pharmaceutical industry as a result of the opioid crisis and people looking for holistic, alternative, or integrative approaches to medicine. And once you kind of drew a straight line through all of these different trends, they all met at psychedelics. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And it's going to happen much faster than anyone expects. And that was just something I had an intuitive feeling about. And so I got really excited, along with the fact that I've done a lot of personal work, not specifically with psychedelics, I have since, but at that time, I've done a lot of work with coaching and meditation and therapy and all these things just to enhance the quality of my life. And I knew just how profoundly those had affected my life. And in that meeting with Judy, she mentioned that a single psilocybin assisted therapy session is like 10 years of therapy in an afternoon. And I was like, oh my God, if there's any truth to that, even if that's a gross exaggeration, if there's any truth whatsoever to that, this is possibly the most important thing we can do for the world, because I could see psychedelics being the thing that made mental and emotional health, excuse me, something that went from being reactive, something we do after we're depressed and anxious, to something we do proactively, much like going to the gym. And I was like, if we can do that, if that's one thing I can leave this world with, excuse me, then there's probably no greater impact that I could have. So I immediately bought it. Challenge we faced was, what do you do when all of these molecules are now scheduled? MDMA is still scheduled and we're 30 years behind MAPS. Psilocybin is still scheduled and we're a few years behind Compass Pathways at this point. Sorry for the background noise. I've got the kids running around. I don't know if it's too loud coming through, but I guess this is life in COVID. Anyway, so we spent a long time. We spent the next 6 months just trying to understand everything that was going on because we didn't have a good sense of where things were. And it really took a lot of innovative thinking and triangulating around all the issues to come around to a business model that we all kind of align on, and one that actually had a viable business. Because again, with all of these molecules scheduled, it's really hard to build a business. And we landed on we became aware of a couple of opportunities. The first one was that there were certain environments where psychedelics are not illegal, like Jamaica. And so we started working to try and create a partnership with the University of West Indies to start studying psilocybin producing mushrooms, in part because it was something we could do while trying to figure out everything else. Then we became aware about ketamine and how ketamine was being used in mental health treatments, and it could be used actually as a psychedelic. And having scaled a large scale clinical network in a past life, we realized that there was a unique opportunity to start doing that work, which actually supported one of the key pieces of feedback we got from everybody, including Rick Doblin and Michael Pollan and the folks at Beckley, who all said, we need the infrastructure. This is not work that can happen in the existing clinical infrastructure of medical care. New infrastructure is needed to support psychedelic therapies. And so, when you have a skill set that matches a need, it's a natural place to dive in. And so after, again, about 6 or 8 months, Field Trip was born at the beginning of April in 2019, and we've been going at it ever since.